All right, guys, and we are live. Welcome to SmartBridge's first LinkedIn Live event, obviously hosted on LinkedIn. Today with us, we have Amir Hamid, one of our Salesforce consultants on the right over here. And then right below, we have Austin Cole, another one of our Salesforce consultants. And today, we are going to be addressing a few questions that we found pretty common among admins, developers, after sourcing a few groups and forums. And some of those topics that we'll be covering are duplicate records, Visualforce, triggers, Apex, testing, security, anything along those lines. At any point, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And the way this will work is we will take questions throughout the event and address them at the end of, or towards the end of the live event. And so let's go ahead and get started with it, guys. Thank you guys, by the way, for joining. To start, I guess I found it most appropriate to start with companies that are curious of migrating to the Lightning platform, right? So they've done their research. They're curious of how they can migrate to Lightning or things that they need to consider before actually migrating to this platform, just to make sure everything goes as smooth as possible.
Sure, Corey. That's a great question. It comes up a lot in almost every company whenever they're getting ready to do the migration. Besides covering all the big stuff, the very sensitive things that you really want to look at is when you're migrating from Classic to Lightning, you want to make sure that whatever you're sending over, it's not totally custom. You want to make sure that custom things are going to work in your Lightning platform.
Mhm.
With a little research, you might find that certain components are already there that you built. So it's best to use out of the box whenever you can. To make sure that things are going to keep working as new updates come along. Because if you do custom and a new update comes, it might not work once in Lightning.
Mhm.
So, but if you're using out of the box, Salesforce will do the heavy lifting and keep updating it for you.
Gotcha.
With that, what happens is a lot of users have a hard time adopting
Mhm.
the fact that they feel that the platform is not as familiar. So when you're building this, you want to make sure that everything is very familiar to the way they were using it, the pages, the components, the object design. The more familiar the platform, the better they're going to be at what they're doing. Otherwise, they're going to show a lot of resistance. If one day they log in and they're saying that, hey, I'm having trouble finding something where it used to be right in front of me.
Yeah.
So the concept of familiarity is huge in any sort of IT project for anybody, because users like what's familiar, plus with new.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, I could definitely see it being a problem. The learning curve in itself, aside from things breaking the platform, would pose as a problem to, employees pushing back, because nobody likes to say that they're set in their ways, but it happens occasionally. And so it makes sense. Okay, and so let's say that these companies are able to migrate, everything goes as smooth as possible. The employees have adjusted, but one of the problems that they see is duplicate records. So it's evident that there's ways to prevent from this point on duplicating records by setting certain rules and fields. But what would you say to those who already have duplicate records present?
So there are multiple things that people can do to help them with that task. The easiest way is you can look up, say, an App Exchange product that basically does what you want to do, that it goes through your system, finds duplicates, and helps you merge them if you want to. The only catch is it comes with a fee. There's a lot of customers might be small businesses, and they can't afford having a monthly fee attached.
Yeah.
So what they really want to do is just do a cleanse of the data once and be done with it, and not be tied with a monthly payment. So another option for them could be that, hey, you could export your data to Excel, and then you do it the old-fashioned way and try matching. I know it takes a lot more work, a lot more hours for a user to clean that, but hey, it's free.
Yeah.
But then you really have to weigh your options. That, hey, how much am I paying in the hours that employees spending cleaning this data manually?
Yeah.
The third option is the most recent, introduced by Salesforce. There's a new component called duplicate jobs.
Mhm.
So what that does is a in-house component in Salesforce that uses your matching rules to go through your whole system and find the duplicates within it, and it will give you the option to either merge them or delete them.
Okay.
But the simple gotcha is that it's only available for a certain type of instances, which feature license you have, and
Okay.
currently that's only performance and unlimited editions that have it.
Got you. So you
So
kind of get what you pay for there then. The more premium is probably going to get, something such as that.
yes,
Got you. And I mean, the fact that it would be more of a one-time deal, considering that you could, like I said, create these rules in the field to prevent it from happening in the future. You may want to consider doing it manually. Just, I guess, weighing the expense of the employee doing it or not is
yeah.
something to consider. Okay.
Depends on the business side. If it's like a huge business, they're getting data from all sources.
Mhm.
They might like something that's paid, but if it's a small corporation, they don't see that much data, so they might not need to look at that big of an amount to pay.
Yeah. Got you. Okay, awesome. So I do want to touch on earlier, you had mentioned customization. So a lot of companies, this is a word that a lot of companies really like to stay away from. They like to kind of exhaust every resource possible before creating custom code in, their Salesforce platform. Could you kind of touch on, why that is, why these companies really steer clear of this?
Yeah, so I can take that one. So, kind of like what you just touched on, custom code really should be a last resort, and Salesforce does a great job at um, allowing that to be the last thing that you have to resort to.
Mhm.
Salesforce, on top of just their normal setup, they have certain things in place on object levels and stuff like that to automate some things. And then you take a look at that and you say, okay, that doesn't really fit my requirements. So the next level that they have is something called Lightning Flows and Process Builder. It's essentially a declarative programming, which is it's a click and drag sort of way to enable this sort of custom functionality that attaches to your records and everything like that. And then, there are some limitations of that too. So you take a look at that. And if that still doesn't fit your requirements, there's still two more options, thankfully. Amir touched on a little bit the app exchange. So essentially, if you're having a problem or if your organization's having a problem, it's a safe bet that someone else has had that problem before.
Yeah.
So before you want to go and invest all this time and resources into developing your own solution, it's always good to check the app exchange and see if someone else has already, fixed that problem.
Mhm.
And then finally, after exhausting all of those options, that's when you'd want to go into the whole, let's actually spend the time to write this code for ourselves to solve this problem.
Okay. Yeah. And so like, let's say that, all the resources were exhausted and you had to do that. Is there any tips you'd want to provide that, let's say you had to do this, things to be aware of just to make sure?
Yeah. So with custom code, it's as it says, it's custom. So Salesforce does its best to help you along with that and make sure that there's not too many faults that can affect your organization. But it really is just to minimize it's a term called technical debt. It's essentially just how much, the more complex that you develop custom code, the more upkeep that has to be, maintained on it in order to keep it working and also just make sure that it doesn't affect anything else.
Yeah.
So when you do decide that you have to go custom code, break it up into smaller chunks and see if any of those smaller chunks can be done without custom code. And then only use the custom code for when you really do need it, just for those little pieces.
Okay. Got you. Yeah. Just as a last resort, because I know,
Exactly.
it has to happen. And so if you're going to do it, just be aware and, take these tips. Okay. Awesome. That's great. So I don't think I actually touched on this. I'm the business development rep for SmartBridge. And so in my role, let's say, a lot of times people like me, they're offboarded, right? But your job is to kind of be the liaison and you have, contact with a lot of, the company contacts. So a lot of times they want you to offboard as smoothly as possible. And sometimes they forget to remove you from the system. And so people in the sales role have that ability to, take contacts and run, and that's not what you want to happen. So would you guys be able to kind of provide any tips on like offboarding in a safe way?
Yeah. So the most important thing that I've seen from experience is have an open line of communication with your admins or whoever's really in charge of your user base on top of your Salesforce organization.
Okay.
Really just having that open line of communication, letting them know, with due time, hey, this is coming up. We need to be ready for it. That way, anything that they need to take care of to make sure that, if whoever's getting offboarded, if they decide to go into the system that they can't, or that they can't really do anything once that news gets broke to them, so that as soon as it happens, your IT, your admin, whomever, they know what's happening, and they've taken the steps to make sure that as soon as that happens, they can flip the switch and they can go ahead and take care of disabling that user account.
Okay. And is there like a time period you'd recommend, maybe 24 hours or 48 hours in advance, just giving them a heads up?
Yeah, I mean, that would be fine. It really depends on your organization, how complex it is. If there's, I know we were just talking about it, but if there's any custom development or anything like that that requires extra steps taken before, you can officially call that person off of the system, you'd want more time for that.
Okay.
What I would like to add on to that is the good comment you made is about time. Time is a key in this feature, in this conversation, because depending on who is the person that's leaving or departing, the process could be different. The criteria of offboarding could be different. So, for example, say somebody is in a manager role, and they leave, but the admin, there's users that what they do is they're submitting sales and they need somebody to approve it, and you don't have a backup approver. You don't have defined on who is the next person in line, and you did not give your admin enough time to adjust the system accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
That can cause a lot of issues in your whole sales process. So not only depending on who is departing, you should have proper criteria. If somebody goes from this department, these are the steps you should follow, and that should make things smooth. Time should be given a lot of importance.
Yeah, no, that makes sense too, because I mean, I can speak from firsthand experience that time is of the essence, especially when getting deals approved. So every day will matter, and so if it's just sitting in purgatory because that person isn't there anymore, then it's wasting time, which is equaling money. So that's definitely helpful. Okay, so I guess we can kind of move to testing. Everyone does it. Not everyone really respects it as they should. It's a very important part of the process of implementation. So would you guys mind kind of touching on a few things that are pretty important in regards to testing and ensuring compliance among, Salesforce?
Yeah. So the first thing that I'd say when it comes to testing, we just touched on it with the whole user thing, but it is time. Time is always the most important thing. When it comes to testing, making sure that you cover all your bases is as important as the actual development and making sure that it works. Because testing is where you find out all that stuff. A lot of situations where things are rushed, people will skim time off of testing because you can't really skim time off of development. And that's really not what you want to do. I'd say on top of just making sure that you take time, also making sure that there's compliance within whoever is testing it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the person who develops it or the team that develops it, they'll be testing it, but you also want outside sources to test it. A lot of times when it's just the developer testing it, they know how it's supposed to work, so they also use it in the way that it's supposed to work,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not always good. You want to make sure that you have those fail safes in case someone who doesn't exactly know what's going on, they get in there, they play with it, and then they might find something that the developer might not have because they're not using it exactly in the intended way.
Yeah.
So a lot of companies will go ahead and have their champions, which is basically just a team of their employees that they believe they can trust with testing things fully and making sure that everything works before it gets released to the more general use.
Mm-hmm.
The main thing when it comes to that is just making sure that they're taking their time with it, that they're not just, it's another assignment, let me just get it out of the way so I can get back to, my more actual job. Say they're a sales rep, why would they want to spend time testing that when they can go be making sales and, doing the rest of their job? Making sure that they actually take that time to fully test, the software or whatever it is, to make sure that not only are they're covering their bases, but they also like, the improvements that are being made.
So, as Austin mentioned, users don't have fun testing, but the thing is, they try to take shortcuts and want to get back to their actual job. But as mentioned, it is pretty important. And sometimes what user will do is that they'll come over to you and start asking you, "Hey, so what am I testing? What should I expect? Where should I click?" you don't want to tell them exactly. You try to want to just keep being a little vague. Don't give them exact instructions, because if you do, they'll just do exactly what you told them step by step and get the result what was expected. What you really want is them to go think outside the box and try to do the same task in different ways. And a real life example is going to be, say, for example, Excel. We all use it. You can save a file in Excel in multiple ways. You can click save. You can exit out and it'll remind you to save, or you can click Control S. You can save.
Yeah.
The basic outcome is saving the file, but how many ways can you do it? So you want to test out all 3 or 5 different ways, and leave it to the user to find even more creative ways to maybe break your system. Things that you didn't, even while you're developing, you didn't think of that. Oh my God, I didn't think of this. I should have thought of this as a blocker. So you want to stay pretty open when it comes to testing. Just give them a good idea, like this is what we expect. Just go at it and run around and do what you can.
So more of like a vague set of directions instead of a more micromanaged approach. So kind of give them what they need to, or I guess what goal they need to reach, and then they can approach it however they'd like.
Yeah, just open the door of your house and let them run around. See what happens.
Plan. Okay. Yeah, and so I guess during this phase, it'll vary before. I mean, I guess depending on what's being done, but is there a rule of thumb for how long testing should really go on for prior to full on implementation?
Yeah. So ideally, you'd want to spend almost as much time as you spent in development. That's absolutely ideal if you have an unlimited amount of time on your plate. But I would say probably minimum that you'd want to spend, depending on the complexity of the enhancements, or if it's an entirely new thing. Depending on how complex it is, I'd say minimum 50 to 75% of the time that you spent developing the tool, just to make sure that you have all your bases covered again. It's not very useful to put out this brand new shiny piece of software and then find out that it doesn't work half the time whenever someone puts in a number too high or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that seems feasible. I mean, like we'd said, it's a very important part, and people often skip it, but financially you'll see the damage that it can do. So
absolutely.
Definitely a good move to kind of take it seriously. Okay, so we did have a question from one of our audience members, Rochelle. She was actually having problems deleting fields. She said she had no problem with it last year, but this year for some reason it's not working as it should be. So did something change with that? Is there a reason that would be happening?
It could be a number of reasons. What you could do is, when you're trying to delete a field, what happens is, if that field is related to an existing process or workflow, even a report, the Salesforce will give you like a little notification on, hey, it's related in these areas. You might want to unrelate it first and then go about it. But the small issue that happens is, sometimes if Apex code is used and the field is mentioned in that, Salesforce might not technically inform you. So it just kind of flies under the radar. So you'll still get the error that you can't delete it. So you want to go back and look at all your processes, maybe consult your developer if you have one, and ask them, hey, could you kind of verify the code, and kind of go from there. I know Austin has a lot of experience in that too.
Yeah. Some things can be hidden in code that you want to make sure that deleting a field or anything like that isn't going to affect it. And like Amir said, Salesforce does have a pretty good system for letting you know where things are used, but it's not perfect. So just making sure you exhaust where that field might be used, where it might be referenced that could be preventing you from deleting it. And then if you get an error message or something like that, that's obviously helpful.
Yeah, I've had something an opposite happen to me before multiple times. What happens is that it's not about deleting a field, but it's like the system is looking for a deleted field and it can't find it. And what happens is, it's like a custom maybe Apex, App Exchange product, or even a custom component that you built. And when you delete the field, that software is still pointing at that field, is looking for it, and it can't find it. And say you want to get rid of that software, you can't delete it because it's still looking for that field. So you have to kind of fool the system and do the complete opposite. You want to bring back that deleted field into play, and then delete the software, and then you'll be back to normal. So it's kind of a runaround, but it tends to work, that you just bring it back and get the requirements done.
Yeah, so just kind of reverse engineer it just to, get to the end goal.
Yeah.
That seems like, it works. So, hey, okay, that's good. I mean, so as far as the pre-vetted questions, those are majority of the ones we do have. We can kind of just talk about your experience with Salesforce. I mean, I guess if you guys would be open to it, just talking about one of the more messy situations you've seen. This is just, off the script. So if that's something you guys would be open to, we could definitely do that. If not,
Yeah, I'm trying to think that one through. Wasn't prepared for that one.
There's a lot. It kind of goes back. The biggest things that at least I see is a lot of things that we kind of covered. That hey, we're having a lot of duplicates in the system. Let's go about that. But
and I know too that you had mentioned that a lot of these apps in the App Exchange will actually charge you for the year up front, if that makes sense. And so that could be a problem as well. Yeah, so having to pay for the year up front when you're only going to use it one time to get rid of data that's already existed. And so that's kind of why, it's better to, if it's a small organization, then, manually doing it could be an option. But like you said, if it's larger, then.
And so some things that I've come across also is like maybe just do an evaluation of your system in terms of licenses. A lot of times a company will get Salesforce and then they'll sign a contract without having that much knowledge on what they're signing. And what happens is they're paying this bill monthly or annually. And as a consultant, when you go in, you can do some identification, be like, okay, I see you have this many licenses and you have this many users. You maybe you can decrease some users and save some money, or decrease some users and upgrade your environment, pay the same amount but get a better instance.
Yeah.
So you need somebody to evaluate your system. I wouldn't say monthly, but I would say like maybe every other quarter, somebody come in and see what you can do to make your system better.
Okay. And also, I do want to just throw a side note out there. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. We'll be reading them off. So yeah, feel free to ask anything you might have a question on. But yeah, so that's very insightful. Trying to think if well, yeah, I guess, yeah. So if you guys have any questions, I mean, like I said, we're pretty much out of questions. Austin, are there any I guess like pretty messy situations you've seen with your experience in Salesforce that you just kind of got a headache and why did you do this? Why would it be done like this?
So yeah, I don't know if I have a specific example, but one thing that I've noticed a lot working with Salesforce is being flexible is probably the most important thing when it comes to requirements and what you're putting on top of Salesforce. And I don't mean obviously not, if you need a certain functionality that's fine, but more so with what we were talking about towards the beginning with the whole when you want to go to custom code or any sort of very low level customization, or I guess high level customization. Having something look a certain way or having something, doing something like that and then resorting to custom functionality just so that it would look a certain way or something like that. Try to be more flexible and stuff like that. That sometimes, when you want something to look at in an exact way, you could get by doing it in the Salesforce way or using the standard Salesforce customization. It'll end up working a lot better in the end. It'll end up being smooth and everything like that because Salesforce is very smooth. They spend a lot of time, and I'm sure a lot of resources making sure that everything works, when it comes to standard functionality. So if you're going to custom code specifically because of one requirement that isn't an actual necessity, think about whether or not you can move around it just to sort of inhibit a standard functionality, just customized solution.
Okay. Got you. Okay. So we did get a question from Vanu. He asked, how do you compare SFDC development experience with General C custom development? Or I'm sorry, General Custom Development. My apologies.
So it's a little different. Obviously it's not just a little different, but the main thing that comes to mind right off the bat is when you're doing general custom development, let's say with the .NET framework or something like that, it is 100% custom, meaning you can do whatever you want. You can make something super efficient, or you can make something take an hour to run, just depending on how you want to do it. I don't know why you would, but you can. With Salesforce, while it is custom code, Salesforce does still apply certain limitations to you. They don't want you to be doing all of this stuff that could slow down the machine in the long run, because it makes sense. But yeah. So things like whenever you have it's called Apex, which is the main development code on top of Salesforce. But anyway, whenever you're running Apex, they do have like a time restraint on things like that to prevent something from running for, I forget the exact time. But then also things like querying the database and stuff like that, they don't fully let you just do whatever you want. But it ends up being for the best. It's not like they limit your capabilities as far as fulfilling requirements, but more so just how you do it. You want to make sure that you're within those guidelines and those restraints that they set for you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay. So this is kind of just for me to you guys. We do have the winter release coming out here. What are y'all's thoughts on that? Is there anything you guys are pretty excited for within that?
Yeah, I got a few things that I've been looking at. So I'll start with the simple one. So if you've used flows before and you're really into when you're into designing the flow and you're lining up the components, the small problem I have is I take a lot more time is lining up the little components exactly to be in one line. Because what happens is whenever you're putting down the page, they're very squiggly and it really annoys me. But what happens now is like with the new feature, you just click auto sort or auto align, and it'll just make them nice and neat for you. So I know it's a very small feature, but it actually is going to save me a lot of time because I spent an hour just sitting there just lining all up. Yeah. But something other than that, something a lot more useful is that what we've noticed that a lot of users go and they're complaining that their pages are taking a lot to load, their Lightning pages, and they really don't know what's exactly causing it. So they're searching, but now Salesforce has a Lightning page analyzer, and what it does, it'll go through your page and tell you the health of that page, like if it's good or what you could do, give you some tips on, hey, remove this or do that, and it'll make your page load a lot quicker. Okay. So that little tool is new, and it's going to be a game changer for a lot of admins like us that we don't have to do that much digging. Just use the tool, and it'll help us identify what's wrong or what we can do to make things better. So those will be like a couple of things that I'm really excited about. There's a good amount that's coming in, but that will be like some of my highlights.
That's huge. I mean, customers don't like to wait, and so to go on a web page and to have to wait 10 seconds versus 3 seconds is a very big difference. Austin, what about you? Do you have anything you're really excited for?
No, honestly, kind of Amir took that one from me. I'm really looking forward to that one. It's like Amir said, it's going to be a game changer. Especially once you get those more complex Lightning pages, they do take a long time. Luckily, Salesforce loads them all in separate chunks. So you'll it won't look like your computer's frozen or anything, but being able to run an optimizer and just kind of seeing where can we improve that time, it's gonna be something special.
Okay. All right, so we actually do have another question from Alessandra. She had asked, as a new admin or the new admin for a company, what's the best way to begin evaluating Salesforce? Someone had previously mentioned a field trip analysis, but it seems that there was a lot more to figure out before you get to that point.
So let's see. So if you're trying to evaluate your Salesforce, there's a quite amount of things you're doing. The best thing is to look at your pages, see how things are aligned, how things are put out. There could be a component design that you can look at. If you're in the Lightning environment, you have a lot of power on how you're laying out the page versus Classic. So you can, if you notice that people are complaining about doing a lot of scrolling to see maybe a related list, it's towards the bottom of the page. What you could do is you could use in Lightning, you can place it towards the top as a separate component so that you have easy access to. So it makes your users a lot more efficient, and they don't have to do all the scrolling that would bother them in any other case. Aside from being new, if you really are, then what you want to do is maybe just get a conversation, speak to the users, ask them what has been your pain points, what can we help you with? Because you could keep digging all day, but the users will give you the actual answer, so it's like a shortcut. So ask them, hey, is a certain dashboard not acting properly, or is a report, can it be modified to be giving you better information and stuff like that?
Yeah, is it feasible to get like user reports and to see the usage by user? Is that because you'd be able to see if user isn't utilizing the platform as much as they should be, then you could kind of start asking those prying questions like, hey, is there something going on that you're not really enjoying on the platform? Then kind of
Yeah, you can run reports, but the general biggest thing I've seen people complaining is about performance. Everybody just wants a fast, efficient software platform, and what you want to do is start by making a list of all the processes that you have in the system right now today on one page. Look at what in this record, what all processes are triggering at what point. Make a list of it, and then maybe make it tighter. Make sure that something is triggering only when meant to. If it doesn't need to, you don't just make sure that it doesn't trigger. There is a little checkbox in, for example, Process Builder that tells you to trigger this only when this certain criteria is met. If you don't check it, it'll trigger it no matter at every save. And maybe you don't want that. In certain scenarios, you only wanted to trigger for that. So a lot of people kind of just kind of move past it. So you might have 10 processes running at one time where it should only be maybe 2. The other ones can just be active and work only when needed. So it can make your system a lot more efficient. So
awesome. Do you have any comments on that?
No. So looking back at the question, based off of what direction was meant by, if you're talking about getting into a new company and then basically exploring their Salesforce organization and where to start, I would personally suggest trying to find out how the company that you're working for, their business model fits on top of Salesforce. When you're going through the training and everything of how to be a Salesforce admin, they teach you certain ways, like, oh, this object is used for this thing, and all that. You get the whole lineup. But whenever you go to whenever you go to some organizations, you'll find out that they didn't set it up that way to begin with. Maybe they're using one object for a different sort of functionality than what it's originally intended to.
Yeah.
So definitely the first thing I would do going into a new company is find out what the business model and how they use Salesforce and how the different objects on top of Salesforce assist that.
Okay, awesome. Well, we are over time here, and I do appreciate you guys joining us today, as well as the audience. I thank you guys for tuning in. If we didn't answer your questions accordingly, then feel free to get with me offline, and we'll get you a more definite answer. But yeah, no, we appreciate you guys joining SmartBridge. We actually do have a maintenance ebook. We know it's tough times for everyone out there right now, so we did create an ebook to kind of help you maintain your platform on a more cost-friendly basis. And so if you'd want that, feel free to get with me offline, and I would be happy to send that over to you. It does not cost any money, but it's our little gift to you for joining us on this, our first LinkedIn Live. So thank you guys. Appreciate it.
thank you. Thank you for having us.